Did you know that while you worked 40 years to save your first $100,000, Jeff Bezos made $2.2 billion in his sleep last Tuesday? That's not a headline, that's mathematics. And today, I'm going to show you why the $317 trillion global debt isn't just unsustainable, it's designed to never be repaid. This isn't a theory, this is the pattern recognition that empires have followed for 3,000 years. And we're watching the final act unfold right now in 2025. Let me take you back to 1971, the moment when money stopped being money and became pure debt. When Nixon closed the gold window, he didn't just change currency policy. He initiated the greatest wealth transfer mechanism in human history. Here's what they don't teach you in economics class. Every single dollar in your pocket, every euro, every yen is created as debt with interest attached. But here's the mathematical trap. If all money is borrowed into existence with interest, where does the money to pay the interest come from? It doesn't exist. It has to be borrowed again, creating more debt forever. This is not a bug in the system. This is the feature. Now let me show you the 6-stage debt spiral that has destroyed every empire in recorded history, and why we're currently entering stage 4. Stage 1, the prosperity trap. A nation experiences economic growth, usually after a war or crisis. In America, this was 1945 to 1971. Gold-backed currency, manufacturing dominance, the middle class expands. People believe the system works because it actually does, temporarily. But here's the hidden mechanism. During prosperity, governments and citizens begin borrowing against future growth. The debt feels manageable because GDP is rising. What they don't see is that they're building the foundation of their own collapse. Rome did this after conquering Gaul, Spain did this after looting the Americas, and America did this after World War II. Every time, the pattern is identical. Stage 2, the currency debasement begins. As debt grows, governments face a choice: raise taxes and face rebellion, or print money and hide the tax through inflation. They always choose inflation because most people don't understand it's a tax. Rome started mixing copper into silver coins, reducing silver content from 100% to 5% over 200 years. The Spanish crown debased their currency 6 times between 1557 and 1680, each time destroying more purchasing power. And America. Since 1971, the dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power. But the real crime isn't the debasement itself, it's who benefits from it. This is called the Cantillon effect, named after the economist who discovered that when new money enters the system, those closest to the money printer, the banks, the government contractors, the connected elite, they spend it first before prices rise. By the time that money reaches you, the worker, the saver, the middle class, prices have already adjusted upward. You got the inflation, they got the assets. This is the invisible wealth transfer machine, and it's been running at maximum speed since 2008. But that's just the setup. Now let me show you where it gets truly sinister. Stage 3, the debt trap closes. Once a nation's debt exceeds 90% of GDP, economic growth slows permanently. This isn't opinion. This is documented in the Reinhard Rogoff study of 800 years of financial crises. Why? Because debt service costs begin consuming more of the budget than productive investment. In 2024, America's interest payments on federal debt exceeded $1 trillion for the first time in history. That's more than the entire defense budget, more than education, more than infrastructure, more than everything except Social Security and Medicare. And here's the trap. You can grow your way out because the interest compounds faster than GDP growth. Japan tried this for 30 years. Their debt is now 260% of GDP. They're trapped in permanent stagnation. And America is following the exact same playbook. We're at 193% and accelerating. But wait, you might say, why don't they just stop borrowing? And this brings us to the mechanism that makes this system mathematically inescapable. Stage 4, the rollover crisis. This is where we are right now in 2025, and this is where it gets dangerous. When your debt gets large enough, you're no longer borrowing for new spending, You're borrowing just to pay interest on old debt. Over $7 trillion of US Treasury bonds mature in the next 24 months. That means the government must convince investors to roll over that debt, to buy new bonds to pay off old bonds. But what happens when interest rates rise? What happens when foreign creditors like China and Saudi Arabia, who are currently dumping treasuries at record rates, stop buying? The answer is the Federal Reserve steps in as buyer of last resort, which means they print the money, which means more inflation, which means your savings lose value faster, which means you become poorer while they acquire your assets at discount prices. This is not a future scenario. This is happening right now. The Fed's balance sheet exploded from $800 billion in 2008 to $9 trillion in 2024. That's not quantitative easing, that's quantitative theft. But here's what most analysts miss. This is where the real transfer of wealth occurs. Stage 5, the asset grab. As inflation destroys currency value and interest rates spike to control it, regular people are forced to sell assets to survive. Homes, stocks, businesses, everything goes on sale. But who has the capital to buy during a crisis? The same institutions that benefited from the Cantillon effect. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, the mega banks. After 2008, institutional investors bought up millions of foreclosed homes at pennies on the dollar. The homeownership rate among young Americans collapsed while Wall Street became the largest landlord class in history. This is called a bailout for them, it's called a catastrophe for you. And there's a legal mechanism that makes this even more brutal. It's called bail-in legislation. And it was quietly passed in dozens of countries after 2008, including the US through the Dodd-Frank Act. Here's what it means. In the next crisis, if a bank fails, they don't need a government bailout anymore. They can legally take your deposits, your savings account, and convert it to bank stock to recapitalize themselves. Your money in the bank is not your money. It's an unsecured loan to the bank. Cyprus did this in 2013. They seized up to 60% of deposits over 100,000 euros. The European Union has a formal bail-in framework. The US has the legal structure ready. When the crisis hits, and the mathematics guarantee it will, your cash in the bank becomes their asset. And now we arrive at the final stage, and this is where the pattern becomes unmistakable. Stage 6, the sovereign default or hyperinflation. Once debt becomes unpayable, only two outcomes exist. Option 1, explicit default, the government admits it cannot pay and bondholders lose everything. This is what Argentina did 9 times, what Russia did in 1998, what Greece effectively did in 2012. In Option 2, implicit default through hyperinflation, you print so much currency that you pay back the debt with worthless paper. This is what Weimar Germany did in 1923, what Zimbabwe did in 2008, what Venezuela is doing right now. Both options destroy the middle class. Both options transfer wealth to those who own hard assets and hold political power. And both options are mathematically inevitable when debt reaches a certain threshold. And we've crossed that threshold. The 317 trillion in global debt isn't just a number, it's 3.5 times global GDP. To put that in perspective, if every human on Earth stopped eating, stopped paying rent, stopped doing anything except paying off this debt, it would take us 3.5 years of total planetary output to clear it. But the interest accrues faster than we can pay, so we never clear it. We just keep rolling it forward, making it bigger, making the eventual collapse more catastrophic. But this isn't happening in 2050. The math says it's happening between 2025 and 2027. Let me show you why. US Treasury yields inverted in 2022 for the first time since 2007. That's the most reliable recession predictor in history. 100% accuracy rate. Commercial real estate defaults are accelerating. 929 billion in loans are underwater as remote work gutted office values. Regional bank failures are resuming. We saw 3 major banks collapse in March 2023, and the contagion was only temporarily contained by emergency Fed lending. Credit card debt just hit 1.13 trillion, with delinquency rates rising to levels not seen since 2009. Auto loan delinquencies are spiking. Student loan payments resumed and millions are defaulting. Consumer spending, which is 70% of US GDP, is now funded by debt. The savings rate collapsed to 3.4%. These aren't isolated problems, these are the mathematical symptoms of stage 5 transitioning to stage 6. And the elites know this. That's why Blackstone raised the largest real estate fund in history in 2023. That's why Bezos, Zuckerberg, and dozens of other billionaires sold billions in stock in 2024. That's why central banks are buying gold at the fastest pace since 1950. They're not forecasting a crash, they're positioning for it. They know the pattern. So what do? You cannot stop this. The mathematics are beyond any individual's control, but you can position yourself on the right side of the wealth transfer. First, understand the Cantillon effect works in reverse during deflation. When asset prices collapse, having liquidity, having cash or gold, makes you the buyer, not the seller. Those who sold stocks in 1928 and bought real estate in 1932 became the new rich. Those who held cash in 2007 and bought assets in 2010 multiplied their wealth. Timing is everything. Second, own what cannot be inflated away. Gold, silver, productive land, essential skills, these hold value across regime changes. Every hyperinflation in history made farmers and craftsmen relatively wealthy, while it destroyed salaried workers and bondholders. Third, minimize debt. The system wants you leveraged because leverage amplifies their control. When the crisis hits, debtors lose everything. Asset owners survive. Fourth, diversify jurisdiction. The sovereign debt crisis is global, but not synchronized. Some countries will collapse first, others will remain stable longer. Having assets or citizenship in multiple countries provides optionality. And finally, develop skills that produce value in crisis. During the Weimar hyperinflation, mechanics, doctors, and builders thrived while bankers and bureaucrats starved. Your ability to produce something people need is the only true wealth that survives regime change. This video isn't a warning, it's a map. The $17 trillion debt trap isn't a problem to be solved. It's a mechanism designed to transfer wealth from those who do not understand the pattern to those who do. Every empire in history has walked this path. We're just the first to do it with digital currency and algorithmic trading. The mathematics don't lie, the pattern is complete, and the timeline is now. In my next video, I'm going to reveal the exact trigger, mechanism that will start the cascade, the specific event that will move us from stage 5 to stage 6, and why it's already locked into the system. Subscribe now, because when this happens, being 1 week ahead of the crowd is the difference between losing everything and positioning for generational wealth. The pattern has been set for 3,000 years, we're just watching it play out in real time.